Back in 1994, on a school playground in Zimbabwe, something happened that to this day just defies any easy explanation. You've probably heard of a lot of UFO cases, but this one, it's one of the most compelling out there. Not because of what was seen, but because of who saw it. So what did all those kids at the Ariel School actually witness? Let's dive in.
Okay, first things first, let's talk about the sheer scale of this. This wasn't just some lone person seeing a weird light in the sky. No, we are talking about more than 60 witnesses. A group sighting of this size it's incredibly rare, and it's the main reason this case is still being talked about and studied so intensely.
And here's the real kicker. Get this. All 60 plus of those witnesses, they were kids. Students at the Ariel School just out for recess. And that right there adds such a fascinating and complicated layer to the whole story. You've got the incredible innocence of childhood clashing with some really tough questions about memory, imagination, and suggestibility. And we're not talking about some blurry dot miles up in the sky. The kids said this encounter was up close and it was personal. They claimed that these beings communicated with them, but not with words. They said they received telepathic messages, and the messages were about the environment and the future of humanity. It's such a specific, urgent message, and it's a detail that has puzzled researchers ever since. All right, so let's paint the picture. Let's go back to that day. The date is September 16th, 1994. We're at a small elementary school in a rural part of Zimbabwe. It was a day that would end up leaving a permanent mark on every single person who was there. The whole thing happened incredibly fast. It started out as just a normal morning break, kids playing outside. Then, bam, a silver disc-shaped object appears. But it didn't just fly by. The kids swear it landed right near the playground. And then these small figures with massive dark eyes got out, and that's when the strange silent communication supposedly began. The event itself is wild, right? But what happened next? The human side of it. That's where the story gets even more compelling. I mean, how did these kids and the adults around them even begin to react to something so completely outside of normal life? As you'd probably guess, the immediate reactions were all over the map. The children felt this crazy mix of emotions. Some were terrified, others were just filled with this sense of awe. And the teachers? At first, they were like, yeah, right, kids making up stories. But the thing was, the stories were all so consistent. And that consistency is what caught the attention of serious researchers, including the late Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Mack. He actually flew all the way to Zimbabwe just to interview these kids himself. What's so telling is just how psychologically complex the response was. This wasn't a simple monster story where everyone screamed and ran. While a lot of the kids, about 40%, were definitely scared and confused, a nearly equal number, 35%, said they felt awe and fascination. And then another 25% felt this profound sense of urgency about the message they got. That emotional cocktail is a big reason this event is so hard to just dismiss. So, how do we make sense of any of this? Well, this brings us to the real heart of the Ariel School story. It's this deep divide between what the eyewitnesses say they experienced and the psychological theories that try to explain it all away. On one side, you have the kids' testimony, which is just shockingly consistent. The telepathic communication, the shared details of the craft and the beings, that specific environmental warning. It's all there, again and again. But on the other side, you've got the psychological explanations. Could it be a case of mass hysteria? Or maybe false memories, spreading like wildfire through a group of suggestible kids? To really get that side of the argument, we need to talk about a key idea. It's called cognitive dissonance. It's basically that intense mental stress you feel when something happens that completely shatters your understanding of how the world works. The theory goes that for these kids, seeing something so totally inexplicable could have created this dissonance. And to resolve that conflict, to make sense of it, their minds might have worked together to build a shared story. We also have to think about the cultural context here. The story has echoes of some African folklore, which includes tales of beings from the sky or star people. Now, this doesn't mean the kids were just repeating old myths, not at all, but it does suggest that their cultural background might have given them a sort of lens, a framework, for trying to understand what on earth they were seeing. So here we are, decades later, and the Ariel School Encounter hasn't just faded into history. In fact, its legacy has only gotten bigger. It's become a cornerstone case in UFO research and a story that just continues to fascinate people. I mean, the event created this massive ripple effect. For the witnesses themselves, many have talked about the long-term psychological impact, how it completely changed their worldview forever.
In UFO research, it became a landmark case. But its journey into pop culture and the media, well, that's been a little more complicated.
Yeah, the media coverage has mostly been about sensationalism. And while that definitely brought global attention to the story, it also kind of framed it as entertainment, not as something to be taken seriously. And all that focus on the spooky aliens often overshadowed the very real psychological impact this had on the kids who went through it.
So here's the crucial takeaway. At the end of the day, no matter what you believe happened on that playground, the Ariel School case is an incredible study in the power of a shared experience. It forces us to ask some really tough questions about memory, about belief, and about how we as humans process things that just don't fit into our neat little boxes of reality.
And that leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? Is this a story about visitors from the stars, or is it really a story about us? About the incredibly complex, powerful, and sometimes downright mysterious workings of the human mind. Perhaps the real truth isn't one or the other, but somewhere lost in the tension between the two.